X Japan's Art of Life, in its 29 minutes of symphonic electricity, displays a powerful emotional journey from despair to unshakable resolve. One can certainly pick this up just by listening to it all the way through, but when one considers the context behind its composition and the specific structure of its lyrical progression, as we will be doing together, it draws even more emotional significance. I love this song, and I hope that this video can convince you to listen to it, if you haven't already, and adopt it as a positive source of inspiration as I have. Let's get right into it. Disclaimer: this video does contain references to suicide. If you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or displaying behaviors that indicate that they may be, please click out of the video now and call your country's Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. I'm not sure what it is for other countries, but the number in America is 988. Furthermore, if you are in America, you can seek more information on how to get help for yourself or someone you know online at 988lifeline.org. The link will also be in the description. During multiple interviews, Yoshiki confirms that he wrote Art of Life's lyrics with feelings of anguish to get across, using images from his personal life as inspiration, his father's death specifically. A 2023 biographical piece from Time, the magazine that is, reveals a broad glimpse of how the events transpired in Yoshiki's life and how his father acted beforehand. His father, a tap dancer and a jazz pianist, showed no signs of depression, showering him with presence and attention until the day he took his own life, in which Yoshiki returned home from band practice to find his father laid out on the kitchen floor surrounded by family members. Regarding Art of Life's lyrical composition, Yoshiki had revealed earlier in an interview for Japanese Music Entertainment that these events and the strong emotions that followed, not just the ones he felt immediately afterward, but complicated feelings of happiness throughout his life in addition to the pain he describes, are the primary inspirations for the song. I used all my pain and happiness. I put everything into the lyrics, so for Art of Life I just started thinking about my own life, what I've been through. I was suicidal after I lost my father, and instead of just doing crazy things, I just wrote song after song, lyric after lyric. This isn't to say that Yoshiki intended the song to simply display these emotions with no purpose, as in an interview for Nippon Project, he says that a main message of the song is to stay optimistic in spite of grief and sadness. He says, "Try to keep going." It's a very positive message, I think. That's also the message for myself as well. I had to convince myself to keep going. Then I wrote the song. In considering these pieces of context from Yoshiki himself, it becomes easier to identify both the despairing quality of the lyrics and their progression to a kind of triumphant acceptance. X Japan's Art of Life contains a lyrical progression of emotion, a mental journey for the narrator, writer, singer, from despair to resolve. As a side note, though this song's lyrics were written by Yoshiki, and the singer is Toshi, I will be using the singer as the main point of view for the song, as the singer is essentially an actor in this case, playing the main role of the song. And one of the ways in which it displays this is through recurring elements. We can start considering these elements as early as the first line of the song, which identifies an important recurring subject, a desert rose. The rose is likely not the main subject of the song, however, as the singer switches to first person in the fourth line, and continues singing from his own point of view in most of the subsequent lines. It likely doesn't even represent a person as a whole, but rather an aspect of the singer himself. The two additional lines that mention the rose refer to its breathing, which the singer hears when he closes his eyes, implying that the rose remains close by, as a positive source of motivation. The rose fits with the song's lyrical progression because at the beginning the rose is solitary, distant, and, with the line, "Are you a white, blue, or bloody red?" relatively unfamiliar to the singer, while in the last lines the rose affects him directly by breathing love into his life. There's also a metaphorical wall that the singer mentions repeatedly. In the first line of the fourth verse, still rather early on, the singer notes that he's making the wall inside of his heart, which he later starts breaking at the end of the song to release his emotions. One last important recurring element to consider is the chorus, which always contains the refrain, "I believe in the madness called now," at its beginning. The first instance of this chorus differs with the other two, because it both occurs about a third of the way through, whereas the others are near the end, and has alternate lines that indicate feelings of helplessness and uncertainty. With "Past and future prison my heart," the singer finds himself stuck in the middle of the madness he describes, where there's no clear answer on how things will go, how to ease his suffering, or how to replace his pain with love and optimism. The narrator is in a place where the idea of living and dying are equally terrifying. These details create a strong contrast with the other two instances of the chorus in the latter parts of the song. The first two lines indicate that the singer is still suffering. Again, we hear the refrain, "I believe in the madness called now," indicating that the present is still tumultuous and uncertain, but no longer does the singer feel that his heart is imprisoned. He acknowledges that time flows and causes suffering, but follows the admission with a resolute, "I want to live, can't let my heart kill myself." That indicates that while the singer's situation probably hasn't changed, he has. Though he still feels the uncertainty and pain from before, as the next line, "Still I haven't found what I'm looking for," indicates, he has changed his focus. Instead of dwelling on the uncertainty and despairing like before, he has accepted his suffering and started actively focusing on his desire to live and find meaning and/or love. As a side note, I found the next two lines somewhat hard to interpret. With the line, "Art of life, I try to stop myself," it seems like the singer is admitting that he sometimes still wants to give in to despair. But what do you think is the truth that his heart destroys? Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas. Regardless, the singer then affirms another resolution. "I want the meaning of my life," even though he doesn't yet know what that meaning is. He asks, "Do I try to live? Do I try to love?" By the ending, the singer feels a strong determination to live and find that meaning, refusing to let the suffering that he still feels immobilize him, and choosing to let the love that he now feels from the metaphorical rose balance it. Now that we've confirmed a lyrical progression, the singer's inner battle from despair to resolve, by analyzing the beginning and end a bit, it is then important to analyze the middle of the song to consider how and when the change occurred. After the singer starts building the wall in the fourth verse, the next verse gives us a sense of time moving forward, with "Through my eyes, time goes by like tears." And the singer seems to realize that the wall hasn't eased his suffering. With "My emotions losing the color of life," the singer indicates that turning away from the world has either failed to prevent the gradual loss of his positive emotions, or has begun to numb all of his emotions altogether. So, within the next three lines, the singer vows to try the opposite approach. He begins to externalize all of his emotions, acting out in desperation. It may be significant that, after this verse, the spoken word segments start appearing in the song with a different voice. It's hard to pinpoint exactly who or what the narrator of the spoken word segments represents, whether it's the singer as a whole or an aspect of him, perhaps the desert rose. It's interesting, though, that it appears at the point where the singer seems to be losing control of his thoughts and actions. Perhaps the narrator is part of his subconscious. At any rate, these middling verses are filled with self-conflict. The singer begins to lose control of himself and experiences primal desires that basically turn him to an animal with, "My lust is so blind, destroys my mind." It is not entirely clear what his lust is referring to, whether it's sexual or even violent in quality, but it destroys his mind. Yet, even with the singer's newfound animalism and impulsiveness, he still has enough of a rational mind to ask himself, why do you want to raise these walls? Right here is a shimmer of the self-analysis that he later uses to break free from his despair, even as the next verse, a spoken word one, sinks him into another wave of impulsiveness. But as this impulsiveness continues, the narrator, whether it's the singer, his subconscious, or something else, realizes that even the acting out fails to provide any answers for how he should ease his suffering. It asks him why he's acting out. And what? For love? And he concludes that, like the wall he had put up earlier to alienate others from him, losing himself has not solved his problems. But at this point, he's still considering solutions with, what am I supposed to do? This is where the first instance of the chorus appears, right in the midst of the singer feeling uncertain of how next to react to his pain. He's tried to shun society and isolate himself, and when that didn't help, he tried to seek attention and catharsis by acting impulsively, which also didn't work. So what does he do next? He closes his eyes, notices the flow of time, possibly with his heartbeat, and realizes for the first time both that he is alive, and that even with all of the negativity and suffering he feels, there is also love and beauty in his life that he can no longer ignore, with all love and sadness melt in my heart. With these revelations begins the turn towards the song's conclusion, as he decides here to get rid of the walls he had built up and open himself back up to living. With dry my tears, wipe my bloody face, I want to feel me living my life outside my walls. Soon after, in what is the final spoken word segment, the narrator taunts him in his efforts to live in defiance of his suffering. She dismisses his efforts as futile using a variety of metaphors, but instead of listening to her, he cries out, I believe in the madness called now, in what is the second instance of the chorus. Though, as I mentioned earlier, this is the same first line as the first instance of the chorus, its meaning has changed. Earlier, the singer felt like the madness of living, with its doling out of pain, was a terrible burden, the revelation of which caused him to want to shut down. Now, perhaps the singer feels like the madness of living contributes love and beauty in addition to its suffering, and that to latch onto it and not despair is itself an art. After this comes the piano interlude, which is itself representative of the singer's struggle, and which I will talk about in the next section. But then we reach the last few verses. The singer feels love in addition to his pain, and has found a reason to live in the form of his search for meaning. After the second chorus, the song moves into an 8-minute piano interlude, starting with a soft, repeating melody. At around the 16.5-minute mark, this melody morphs into one that's more intense, and that rises gradually with higher and higher notes. Yoshiki adds a second piano at the onset of one of this melody's highest pitches, which first falls down to a lower pitch and then moves everywhere, void of any obvious pattern and creating dissonance as it clashes with the other melody. If we think of this first melody as a set of stairs, as that's what the continual rising seems to simulate, and the second piano as the madness that the singer repeatedly references, as it remains free from any expectations from the listener, then it's here that the singer tries to ascend towards the peace for which he is looking, even as life's confusion, its glimmers of happiness and murky depths of pain, try to push him off the path and back into animalism. Soon after, the second piano gets louder, swallowing the first melody within its loud, droning bass notes and suddenly jagged highs. And yet, even through this, if the listener focuses very carefully, they can hear the first piano playing in the background, quiet as a fading pulse, but still there. The singer's resolve keeps him ascending even as the madness reaches its peak. Eventually, the original melody takes back control of the interlude, even as the second piano continues to try to divert the listener's attention, remaining a strong constant in the second piano's last-ditch efforts to derail everything. And, in a beautiful conclusion to this interlude, the second piano realizes its own madness is futile and begins mimicking the original melody, mixing in with it in time, both pianos becoming one. Now, at the end of the piano interlude, the original melody is far stronger, louder, and more evocative than it started. The singer has accepted life's madness, beauty, and suffering as one, and has rejected despair in favor of the art of life, finding the strength to begin breaking down the walls he had earlier built. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and that the narrative progression of the song Art of Life by X Japan, which I've tried to highlight, is somewhat clear. I think this song is positive in the message it's trying to spread overall, as it seems to say that even though it can be a struggle to find a reason to live, especially when one faces intense emotional suffering, the struggle is ultimately possible to win. One can gain strength by accepting their pain and suffering, and by resolving to focus on life's beauty even at their lowest moments. But what did you think about this song? And if you haven't heard X Japan's Art of Life yet, drop everything and give this masterpiece a listen, as it's so good. Did you agree or disagree with what I've talked about? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.